You know, as you grow and scale in your private practice, one of the things that you're going to really find helpful is to get a good electronic health record system. Therapy Notes is the premier electronic health record system for mental health practitioners. It's what I use in my own practice, and they are just highly recommended. So go check them out today. You'll go over to therapynotes.com and use the coupon code Gordon, and you can get 2 months for free. That's a pretty good deal. Check them out today. therapynotes.com. This is the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer, helping you to navigate your private practice journey. This is session number 71 of the Practice of Therapy podcast. Hello, folks. I'm Gordon Brewer, and I'm so glad you've joined me here at the Practice of Therapy podcast. And thanks for letting me into your ears and into your lives and just joining me on this private practice journey. So here we are into March, and I am so happy to finally see some warm weather here in East Tennessee. The rain has finally stopped this week, and it's just nice to dry out. And yesterday I was got to spend some time with some buddies of mine, and we were outside just sitting in the sunshine talking and doing what guys do, just telling stories and just having fun and laughing a lot. And that's what I love to do when my time off, is just spend time with friends and family and do all those fun things. So, but glad you've made it to the podcast today. You know, I've got coming up as my guest, and I'm going to introduce her to you here shortly, is Lis Poynter. And Laura is somebody I met back in November when I went to visit Kasey Compton and her crew up at Mindsight Behavioral. And so I'll tell you a little bit more about Laura here in a minute. But one of the things I did want to mention to you is, and you've heard this from me already, but be sure and check out the Money Matters in Private Practice course that I've got in the pre-launch phase here. I've got over half the content up on the platform, and take advantage of this half price deal during this pre-launch. It's not going to be that price much longer, but in this course, I teach you about the financial side of private practice. You know, most of us don't learn much about that whole side of things in graduate school. At least for me, I learned nothing about it. And most of the stuff that I've learned about business finance and all of that, I've learned on my own, but also learned a lot of stuff the hard way. And I don't want you to have to do that. And I've learned from some mistakes I've made. But anyway, in this course, I pull together just all the resources I've learned over the years and really put it together in just a course that it's an online course you can take at your leisure. And we go into detail about just the whole financial side of private practice, everywhere from accounting and bookkeeping to knowing what to charge for sessions. We talk about some of the profits first stuff that that you've heard from me about. And that's where Kasey Compton ties in and Laura tie into all of this to some degree. But anyway, I think it's going to be a valuable course, and I'm really excited to get this out here for people. But go check it out at practiceoftherapy.com/finance course. And if you'll use the coupon code when you go to checkout, just take 50, TAKE 50, and you can get it at 50% off here for for just a few more weeks, depending on when you're listening to this. So go check that out. I think it'll be a valuable resource for you. The other thing I want to mention quickly here is just about Killing at Camp, and you've heard me mention that in a previous episode. Killing at Camp is an event that Joe Sanok, my good friend Joe Sanok over at Practice of the Practice, is putting together in October, and it is going to be one of the best conferences you could ever attend. And I'm going to be there. I'm going to be one of the speakers at the conference, along with several other people that I've had here on the podcast. We've got Laura Long is going to be there, Amanda Patterson, Kasey Compton, who I mentioned here just a minute ago. I'll tell you a little more about Laura Poynter's connection with Kasey. Also, let's see, who else I'm leaving out some people. Allison Pigeon, Katie Englert, all people that I've had on the podcast before, and they're all going to be we're all going to be in Colorado together and just talking about private practice and building your practice, and you're going to be with a lot of like-minded people. So check it out at killingitcamp.com and take advantage of the early bird registration. I think it's only going to be happening until April. And I know one of the things we're going to be doing is I'll be getting together with Joe and several of the other people, and we're going to be talking about it more. I think that event, a master class, is coming up in April, but I'll get you more information about that as soon as I know more specifics about it. So go check that out. So little bit of a backstory here before I introduce Laura. Laura I met back in November when I was on my way up to the AAMFT conference, and I stopped off in Somerset, Kentucky, which is in kind of Middle Eastern Kentucky, and got to meet Kasey in person, and also got to meet Laura. And Laura is her human resources director, and Mindsight Behavioral is just a model private practice in terms of not only the size that they have created, and size, I got a chuckle here. Size isn't everything, but we can learn a lot from people that have large practices. Particularly, Kasey has just put together the systems and processes to support a practice of that size. And one of the things about it is that Laura Poynter is as I mentioned, the human resources person. And so our conversation today is really about the culture they have created to sustain all of that. So without further ado, here is my friend Laura Poynter. Well, hello, folks, and welcome again to the Practice of Therapy podcast. And I'm so excited to have one of my newer friends, Laura Poynter, with me here today. And I met Laura through Kasey Compton. And Kasey, for you, those of you that have heard the podcast before, I would invite you to go back and listen to the podcast I did with Kasey. Kasey was with me when I interviewed Mike Michalowicz as well, the author of Profit First. But who I've got today is Laura, and she is the human resources director at Mindsight Behavioral. And so we're going to spend our time just talking about things around hiring and group practices and all that kind of stuff. So welcome, Laura.
Hi, Gordon. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, I'm so excited that you were able to join me. Why don't you just introduce yourself here, Laura, and tell folks a little bit about how you've landed in this whole private practice realm as a human resources director.
Well, I actually was very fortunate, Gordon, to retire at the age of 43 from the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And I always knew that I wanted to have a second career. Mm-hmm. In my previous career, one of the things that I saw lacking was just culture. I feel like there's a very strong bond between the culture of a company and the actions of a human resource department. Mm-hmm. So as I ended that career, I decided that I would go back to college and pick up some additional training in human resource management. Well, Mindsight at that time was just starting to flourish in our town of Somerset. I did not know Kasey, but I just kept seeing all of these creative advertisements for Mindsight. And every time I would see one, I would think, gosh, I really want to work there. Mm-hmm. And she finally posted a position, not for human resources, mind you, but she was looking for someone that loved putting puzzles together. And I thought, this is my chance. I'm going to apply. So that's what I did. I came in, and little did I know it was actually Kasey who interviewed me. So once she realized that my background was more in human resources and staff development and things of that nature, she saw a different plan for me, more so than the role that she had advertised. Mm-hmm. So that's how I ended up at Mindsight, working with Kasey, which has been just an absolute joy from day one. From the moment I stepped in the door till today, it has been the best career decision of my adult life.
Oh, wow. That is great. Yeah. And one of the things I just know, I went, back in November, I went on my way to the AAMFT conference. I stopped off in Somerset and got to see the thing that's cool about what I do with this practice of therapy is I get to meet all these people. And most of the time when I meet them, it's just on Zoom, but to meet them in person, it's just really great. And it was very evident when you walk into the building there in Somerset. It's just, there's a culture, there's bright colors. It's just impeccably decorated, and it's just a feeling that you get when you go in there. And so yeah, I guess the big question is that for folks that are thinking about starting a group practice, or they maybe already have a group practice that are listening to the podcast, you want to just talk a little bit about how you guys develop the culture there and how all that's evolved. I know that's a broad question, but.
Well, not necessarily. I think that when Kasey developed Mindsight, she knew exactly what type of culture she wanted, but it was just a matter of bringing in the right people, surrounding herself with the core group to make that happen. Now, what we function from is a book called The Ideal Team Player. If you have not read that book, it is definitely worth your time. It's fantastic. And in that book, they talk about looking for 3 core characteristics in your staff. So everyone that we hire, we look to make sure that they're humble, hungry, or smart. Wow. And so now we're going on 80 plus clinicians. I interview a lot of people. Not everyone gets a job offer because I need them to have at a minimum 2 of those. Definitely hungry, but I need them to be humble, hungry, or smart. Our brand motto is Mindsight where people feel cared for. And this is just not our clients. This is for our staff as well. So from the moment that I bring someone in to interview, I reinforce the fact of this is how our culture is. This is what you can expect. This is what we expect from you. Mm-hmm. And then we bring them in and they see that everything that I've said in the interview about having a drama-free workplace, having an environment where they're supported to learn and grow, and how the agency is going to support them to do that. When they actually come in and they come on board and they see this level of support between myself and Kasey, our other clinicians, then they realize that, hey, this is part of a culture that I want to be in. Mm-hmm. So it's not just our bright colored walls and our smiles and things like that. It truly is just giving them the best work environment possible, because when people are happy at work, then you can have that. We really want people to be able to control their schedules and mesh their home life with their work life. And when people have that good balance, that's when you get good things from your staff.
Right. And that's so important. I know, having worked in other places, the culture is what makes or breaks an organization. And it's just, I can think about all the places I've worked where it wasn't a great culture, and then some of them that were really good cultures, or at least I felt like I was, I belonged and all of that. So I think that's a real important thing. So in the interviewing process, how do you kind of determine the right fit for Mindsight?
Well, the ideal team player, of course, has questions that goes along with the book. I utilize those. That gives me a good insight about them as a person, their personality, whether or not they have goals, things of that nature. But I literally just listen. I let them do the majority of the talking. I let them lead almost the interview to a point that I can see, their type of personality. That plays a big role. We have 6 physical locations in Kentucky.
Wow.
And each of those locations are different. They have a different mix of people. So when I am hiring for a Barberville office, which I'm currently in the process of doing right now, and I'm super excited because I think I've found the perfect person to join that group, I look at the personalities of the people that are already there, the staff that are already in that office. And then when I bring in someone new, I try to match that personality and, of course, good clinical skills up to the location. So far, this has worked very well for us. And I hope it continues to work for us as we move forward and grow and scale our practice even more.
Right. Yeah, and that's so are there ever times when maybe the fit isn't a good fit, and how do you guys handle that?
Well, let's say I had a clinician that we hired, and when we interviewed him, he was fantastic. I mean, he was just so humble, so smart. And when I say smart, I don't mean book smart. I mean common sense smart. You have to have good common sense. And we hired him and brought him in because we knew he was just going to be the perfect fit. We don't always get it right. And in this situation, he came in, he had came from an environment where he was scheduled Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. Our environment, you control your schedule. So not only do you have to be able to have a drive, but you also have to have good time management skills. And he came in and he struggled with it. He was a great clinician. His clients loved him, but he just was not able to produce or maintain his caseload. And so at that point, knock on wood, I haven't had to fire anyone yet. They come in and they realize that, you know what, I probably don't belong here, and they leave. Someone who is very dramatic is not going to fit in with Mindsight at all, just simply because our staff are so motivated about having good work environments that it never even makes it back to me. Normally the staff in the office shut it down before it ever would make it back to me.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's, I'm going to definitely have a link to that book. The Ideal Team Player. Do you remember who it's by?
I actually have it right here.
Okay.
There are certain books that I keep close to my desk because I like to refer back to them.
Yeah.
But Patrick Lencioni.
Okay.
And he also wrote a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So one of the things about when I was hired, this was the first book that Kasey ever gave me. When I was hired, the culture here was very different. On my first probably 2 or 3 days, I wasn't sure that I was going to survive in this environment because I could tell that people were very dissatisfied and just no one smiled and no one talked or anything like that. And Kasey sat me down and said, this is not what I want for my practice. And, handed me the book and said, this is what I want. And so it was just a mix of a different personality was in a position similar to what I'm in now, And, she just did not support this culture. So,
yeah.
Now it's just an entirely different place to walk into.
Right. So what are the things that you guys are doing that just kind of maintains that culture? I know hiring the right people is obviously very key to that, but I know that just from following you guys on Facebook and all of that sort of thing, it's a fun place to work. And so why don't you tell folks a little bit about some of the fun things that you're doing?
We have fun every day. I mean, every day it's just a fun day. Our clinicians, just do great clinical work, but we also do things like, for example, if you follow us on Facebook, one of our therapists, Rebecca Patterson, in our Danville office, she recently did a week of videos for Play Therapy Week. And those were great. I mean, I had friends of mine who were just in love with them. But we take things that people love and we allow them to run with it.
Yeah.
She loves play therapy, so we let her run with it.
Yeah.
Another way that we support the culture is that we provide people with opportunities to learn and grow themselves.
Mm-hmm.
We allow them to find their niche and take that niche and really make themselves specialized so that, they make a name for themselves. We encourage them to do community involvement. We have a couple of really cool things going on in our office right now with foster children and just making sure that they have what they need and food. We have some of the most passionate people working for our company. And they are, when you allow people to do what they love, and support them and compensate them well for a job well done, then what you get back is what you need to grow and maintain.
Right.
So at Mindsight, we have very little, if any, turnover, simply because people do feel a level of support. And if they don't, my door's always open.
Yeah.
Kasey's so perceptive about people. And I'm sure you are as well because you're a therapist. But she's so perceptive. She can pick up on moods and attitudes. And, thankfully I've learned some of these things from her that have made me better. And if we pick up on something that maybe someone's just not happy with, then we sit them down and we let them be a part of that solution.
Right.
And I think that makes a difference.
Yeah. I know, just remember back at Halloween, you guys had a ball. Just remember seeing all the costumes and
Gordon, I still have a Maleficent costume hanging in my office. And I kid staff every day that I'm going to put it on if I need to. I also have a chicken suit in the trunk of my car.
That's funny.
I tell Kasey all the time, I'll just shake my head. She knows I'll do it. I love doing anything that's going to make people have a better day.
Yeah.
And but that day I went out across Eastern Kentucky in that chicken suit. That was just almost pushing it.
Yeah.
But we had a great job.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Wow. So to switch gears a little bit, if someone were in maybe solo private practice and they were thinking about starting a group, there's a couple of ways to do that in terms of how you use your clinicians, whether they're contractors or whether they're employees. And this is a really broad question, Laura, but what are some things that people need to keep in mind when they're thinking about bringing on new people besides necessarily the culture? Obviously, you want to have the right people with you, which I think that's the number one priority. But what about some of the logistical things around bringing people on and hiring and all of that sort of thing?
Well, I'm also a consultant with Kasey Consulting. I do virtual human resources consulting. So this is a question that I actually get asked quite a bit with some of the clients that I provide services to. These are solo practices that are looking to grow and scale their own practices.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I tell them, first off, is, they have to decide. Some states mandate, everyone has to be a W-2. States like Kentucky says they can be W-2s or 1099s. The logistics part of bringing people in is just simply making sure that whatever you're offering is something that is needed in the community that you're in. So, if you're in California and in your small area, you have 10 other agencies that are providing couples counseling. Let's just use that as an example. But no one's providing children's therapy. Then you really want to look at that. I think that the first thing you need to do is look at the marketability of the practice and see where you're offering services, and if that's something that is going to be needed. And I think you need to do that before you ever even consider bringing on a clinician.
Right.
In order to, I had a conversation with one of our VAs this morning on a similar topic, and in order to maintain staff, then you have to have clinical hours for them to get. Mm-hmm. And so I just think that you have to be able to take the bull by the horns, so to speak, and go out and market your practice first, start getting those referrals in, and then decide, hey, am I going to bring people in and pay them based on maybe a percentage split as a 1099, or if you are providing insurance, if you take insurance and have billable services like that, then you may want to do a set pay scale. I know Kasey talks a lot about these things in some of her podcasts.
Right. She does.
And so we do just kind of a mix of all of it here at Mindsight, just to make it work. So that's something that, as people start their practices and things like that, that they'll just have to weigh what's best for their practice and not look at it as, okay, well, I'm only going to hire one person. If they want to grow, then from the gate, they need to say, okay, I want to scale this practice so that I don't have to change anything if I have 20 employees.
Yeah. And one of the things I know, I guess what just draws me to you guys so much, well, obviously the culture, and you're just fun people. But the other thing is just how brilliantly you guys have put together the systems and processes to maintain all of that. And I've learned so much. I know when I came through, it was when Kasey was doing some of her consulting group that she's been involved with Joe Sanok. And, just those systems and processes you have in place are just so key to making it run smoothly. And, you want to talk a little bit about that, just about maybe some of the things that you guys have kind of flushed out over the years in terms of those systems and processes?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think one of the most recent things that we realized was that we needed a client care coordinator. Now, that's part of our system now. We knew what type of person. Kasey and I had sat down and talked about, okay, so what type of person would you want to meet if you were brand new reaching out for mental health services? What kind of person do you want to talk to on the phone? So we ended up hiring this very bubbly lady. I don't know of any other. Her name's Brittany. We call her Bubbly Brittany just because she's like that. But that's one of the systems that we put in place. What we have found by doing that is our rate of intakes has gone up very well.
Wow.
As far as people getting scheduled, quickly, getting them in. A lot of times people will reach out for help, and if you don't get them scheduled quickly, then they may change their mind.
Right.
And so we have a turnaround time usually of about 24 hours in between the time that the referral comes in and they're actually on a schedule with a clinician.
Wow. Yeah.
So Brittany works really hard to do that. Another one is that we follow up with all of our referral sources. We let them know that, hey, this person that you referred to us, we are actually, they've been coming to their appointments. this is where they're at, things of that nature. We recently changed something else within our practice. We weren't sure if it was going to work. But like I said, we have a really good relationship with our clinicians. And our clinicians were talking about with new intakes, there's obviously a percentage of those people that reach out for the help, but then they don't show up to the appointment.
Right.
And of course, our clinicians are paid per billable hour, which means that if someone doesn't show up, then they don't get paid.
Right.
So I sat down with a few of them, and we came up with a plan to talk to one of our clinicians, and that clinician was like, okay, let's try something. And I'm like, we're always willing to try it.
Yeah.
She suggested that we let one person do all of the adult intakes, almost like an intake coordinator, so to speak. So we put this in place for 30 days to try to get some data on it, to try to look to see if it changes things, to try to help people out initially with those no-shows. What we found was that every client who came in for their intake returned for their second appointment.
Wow.
So our retention rates were improved just by making this small change in our practice.
Wow.
So, it's hard to dispute data. And so that's something that we've continued as well.
Yeah.
And, it's not, we had one or two clinicians who I think would have preferred to have done their own intakes. But when we looked at the numbers, we had to really look at what's best for our clients and what's best for the company.
Right.
In this situation, it was best to move forward with the intake coordinator process.
Right. Right. Yeah. That's, I know that's just to see a huge piece is that first impression that people get when they're calling, our clients that come to us. It takes a lot of courage to just make that phone call and for having somebody on the receiving end of that is just warm and welcoming and helps put people at ease, during that process is really, I just think so important. One other question, Laura, I was just wondering how you guys go about knowing who to place clients with. I know one of the big things, and I know Kasey and I have talked about this, when you're in a larger practice, so different therapists have different gifts in terms of, who they're best to work with, kind of as I like to refer to, what are their superpowers? How do you guys determine who to place new clients with?
Well, what we have is it's called an openings document. It's a simple Excel spreadsheet where we've gone in, we list our clinicians there, we list all of their, we let them go in and put their strengths, their ideal clients, their age groups, their openings, all of that. Another key point in that is that Brittany maintains a very close relationship with our clinicians. So not only does she act as that point of contact for the clients, she's also a point of contact for the clinicians.
Right.
So, for example, we had a clinician the other day, she's getting really full, and she went and I walked past the office and she was sitting in Brittany's office and they were having a conversation about, how can I maximize my schedule? How can where do you think I might have room to put, a few more people without, doing anything with the quality of the people that I'm currently working with?
Right. Right.
So just within maybe 10 minutes, they had figured out that she could add more children, her passionate children, to her schedule just by adding another 2 hours to her schedule in a school system that she's already providing services in.
Wow. Yeah.
So we also hire people. When we hire someone, we know that they have a niche, and we market that. We have a great marketing program, I think, at Mindsight, If you follow our Facebook page at all, you can see some of the marketing that we do. And I think we excel at that. And I think that's a huge point. Trevor does a great job, and Kirsten, in marketing the company.
Yeah.
And so we market their individual strengths. And then people call in and they want to see, someone who's maybe specializing in EMDR or couples counseling or anything like that. So
right. Yeah. And that's it. Yeah, you're right. I think, and here's the key that I know to the marketing that you guys do. And I want people to hear this. It's all about that face-to-face contact with people in your community. It's, and that's where you guys are excelling. And that's one of the things I noticed. Trevor is out there going to doctors' offices and, different referral sources, and just, building that relationship. And that's it.
If you have a few good referral sources, you can do amazing things. But in order to have those good referral sources, then you have to nurture those and grow those, just like you would any other relationship.
Right. Wow. Well, Laura, this is great stuff, and I want to be mindful of your time. But any other parting thoughts you've got for folks, just about some of the things we've talked about? I know that's maybe putting you on the spot a little bit, but any other things that you would want people to know?
Well, Gordon, I think that from my standpoint, in the position that I'm in, one of the things that I would want people to know is they really need to sit down and they really need to think about what type of practice they want, what type of culture they want to create, what type of clinicians they want to hire. All of these things are so important when you're growing and scaling your practices initially. Get your system and processes in place. I think just as humans, we try to jump in sometimes feet first without any planning. But when you're in a business like we are, planning is key. Yeah,
it is. Well, Laura, if folks want to get in touch with you or find out more about what you do and find out about Mindsight, what's the best way for them to do that?
Gordon, the best way for them to reach me is at laura@consultwithkasey.com.
Okay.
You can also find me on our website, mindsightbehavioral.com, or consultwithkasey.com, which is Kasey's consulting company. And any way that I can help anyone, I'm always happy to do it.
That's great. And we'll have all that information in the show notes. So, Laura, great to have you with me today. And it's also great to have another Southerner where you don't have a funny accent.
Now, Gordon, I knew that you were probably going to say something about my accent.
No, it's what is lovely to me is it's just a very familiar way of talking here in the Appalachian region of Eastern Kentucky, Northeast Tennessee, and Southwest Virginia. It's a beautiful place.
It is.
It's the place to be. So, thanks, Laura. Well, I'm so glad that Laura joined me for the podcast. I learned so much from her today and in this episode. And, one of the things that I think is so important to remember, just a quick story here. I remember maybe a few years ago, I had a client that came to see me in my practice, and they had been working with another therapist. And I just asked him, I said, why did you change therapist? Why did you want to, switch to somebody else? And their answer was interesting in that they mentioned to me that the person they had been working with just seemed, they said, well, they're just kind of unorganized. And I just, go in their office and it's kind of messy, and they just seem, it's just not very warm and welcoming. And I just, it just didn't feel right. And so, I've paid attention to that since then, and just really really understanding more and more the importance of culture in your practice. And I think that goes without, regardless of the size of practice you have. I think even as a solo practitioner, those first impressions that you make with people when you first talk to them, that first initial phone call with them, until the time they come into your office, and what the atmosphere of your office is, and the people that you have working with you. I know that you've probably run into this too. You can go to places and you walk into a place of business, whether it be traditional brick and mortar kind of business, or maybe even going to like another professional, like a doctor's office or whatever. And if the culture is not right there, it just gives off a bad vibe. And I think people pick up on that pretty quickly. So a lot to learn here about culture and just all the things about scaling a practice and that sort of thing. And so I'm looking forward to hopefully having Laura again on the podcast. And also I need to get Kasey back on here, because she's brilliant in what she has to offer as well. And I know firsthand why Laura enjoys working where she does. It is a great place. So big plug for Mindsight Behavioral Group over in Somerset, Kentucky, and other places in Eastern Kentucky. So folks, again, thanks for joining me on the podcast today. Do check out our sponsor for today, Therapy Notes, and you can get to that at therapynotes.com and use the coupon code Gordon once you check them out, and you can get 2 months free just by using that coupon code. Another thing too, just a quick update. I found out this morning, I meant to mention this earlier, that Brad Pilner, who is the founder of Therapy Notes, Brad, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly. I just made contact with him on Facebook Messenger, and he's agreed to be on the podcast. So looking forward to him joining me here soon. The other thing, just a quick reminder, check out the Money Matters course, practiceoftherapy.com/finance course. And if you'll use the coupon code there, TAKE50, TAKE 50, you can get that at half price during this pre-launch phase. And that's only going to be going on for a few more weeks. So take advantage of that. Several of my friends out there have done that, and I appreciate you doing that. I think you're going to find it a valuable resource, a valuable course for you to learn about the financial side of private practice. And real quickly, Killing It Camp coming up in October. Go check it out at killingitcamp.com. And my friend Joe Sanok is putting that together, and going to have a bunch of my good friends there. It's going to be a blast. We're going to just have so much fun together there at Killing It Camp. So take care, folks. Do subscribe to the podcast wherever you might listen to it, on whatever podcatcher you use, whether it be iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Play. I think I'm hitting the high spots there. We're on most of the podcatcher apps now. Even on Amazon Echo. I did that the other day with my Amazon Echo, and I said, play the Practice of Therapy podcast, and Alexa did it. So that was pretty cool to hear it on that platform. So take care, folks, and thanks again for letting me into your ears and into your lives and joining me on the podcast. We'll talk to you next time. Been listening to the Practice of Therapy podcast with Gordon Brewer. Please visit us at practiceoftherapy.com for more information, resources, and tools to help you in starting, building, and growing your private practice. And if you haven't done so already, please sign up to receive the free private practice startup guide at practiceoftherapy.com. The information in this podcast is intended to be accurate and authoritative concerning the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, or producers are rendering legal, accounting, or clinical advice. If you need a professional, you should find the right person for that.